Today, we're going to be covering a question that I get all the time, and that is, what optics plate do I recommend for optics-ready guns? Well, I got an answer for you, and I got a couple of Glocks to show you why. Playtime's over. Let's get to work. Hey guys, we're here. Welcome back to the bench. Today we're going to be doing some optics swapping, but we're not here to talk about the optics themselves. In this case, it's a couple of Holosons. We are here to talk about the mounting systems. That's right. We're going to be talking about the stock Glock MOS and the plates that come with it, as well as this offering from C&H. First things first, let's go ahead and get the dot off of this one and the plate off of this one so we can see how these optics plates mount to the firearms. First up, let's go ahead and pull the Holosun off of this one. Alright, there we go. So this is a Holosun 407 in green, and this is going to actually be swapping over to our Glock 34 here, and it's going to be getting replaced with a Holosun 507 in green version 2. Now let's go ahead and get a bigger driver and pull the plate off of this one. This is our C&H V4 plate. Alright, and let's set that aside. Now let's go ahead and pull off the plate on the top of our 34 here. Now these are just Torx screws holding everything in and together, and there comes our block plate for our Glock over here. Now we can go ahead and open up the MOS plates that came with our Glock 34 here. Now what this comes with is 4 different plates. It's a 1, 2, 3, and a 4. So let's go ahead and open this thing up. We're going to use an ABKT pocket knife on this guy. So if we were giving points here based on packaging, C&H would win. Glock has thermomolded the plastic to the back of the packaging, and I can't get through this and to the dots without tearing this apart. Anyway, so let's go ahead and take a look and see what it's telling us to do, yada yada yada, install it. Okay, that's simple enough. On the back here, it's going to tell us what the MOS adapter plates actually are. So we have a 1, 2, 3, and a 4. We are doing the Trijicon RMR plate here because we are putting on the Holosun, which is on the RMR base, and that's going to end up being plate number 2. I guess this is our option. We got to cut into here and dull by my knife by scraping it across some steel plates. Okay, so there is our number 2 optics plate. I'll go ahead and set that down. And now I need a couple of screws that are kind of shoved in here. And a 1, 2. I will give Glock this. It's very nice that they actually give you the tool to be able to install the plate with. Now, Holosun does also give you the tool, but the C&H plates do not come with tools to be able to install, so you will need your own tools for the C&H plates. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and take a look at the plates themselves. We've got our Glock MOS plate over here on the left, and we've got our C&H plate over here on the right. So a couple of key differences that we can see here right off the bat is where we're placing the optic and how we're mounting the optic, how we're keeping it in place. So one upside is both of these systems do have our front recoil lugs here. You can see them right here and here. The Glock MOS plates recoil lugs are actually a little bit more stout than the C&H recoil lugs. However, those lugs don't really need to be too tall. There's not a whole lot going to go on. Out of curiosity, let's go ahead and find out the diameter of these. Okay, so the Glock MOS one is 146, and the C&H recoil lug is a 145. So we're a thousandth smaller on the C&H versus the Glock MOS. A thousandth isn't really enough to do any difference. I just wanted to check and see and make sure there wasn't like 5 thousandths difference. So recoil lugs in the front and the overall placement for the mounting bolts onto the slide are pretty much all these things have in common. You've got a completely separate system for supporting the optic and a completely separate system for actually mounting the optic to the plate. Over here on the Glock MOS side, you can see we don't have any space taken up on the top or the bottom, meaning that we're going to have a gap over the dot. Let me show you. So here's our dot. I'm going to go ahead and set that on our plate, and you can see that we've got bare plate in the front and in the rear of this optic, meaning this optic is not sandwiched between anything, meaning all of the recoil that this optic is going to see is going to be supported by our recoil lugs in front and by the actual threaded fastener in the back. So in talking about the Glock MOS plate, we do have a standard threaded hole back here in the back. So that means, let me put a fastener in here really quick. So here's a fastener installed in there, and you can see right here, this is where that optic is actually going to be imparting recoil down into the plate, in addition to these front recoil lugs. Now, the problem there is that this is actually placing pressure on the threaded portion of this fastener. Threaded portion of fasteners are not meant for shear force. Fasteners are only meant for tensile force, pulling the faces together, and then those faces, the friction between those two surfaces, in this case, the plate here and the bottom of our dot, is what's meant to keep that force from imparting through our threaded fastener, because threaded fasteners are weak in shear force. Now, going back over to our C&H V4 plate. You can see the V4 plate's got something going on kind of weird back here at the back. Now what this is back here, this is actually a T-nut going through from the back. This is a steel T-nut. What that does is when we've got our fastener in here, now you can see that we're not imparting any force on our threaded fastener. We're actually imparting that force on the outside of our threaded T-nut, meaning that our fastener is only working in that tensile force and not in the shear force that they're not made to handle. In addition to that, you can see that the C&H plate has a spacer in the front, and what that does is when you put your dot on top, that's going to fill that space up there and make it so that your dot is actually sandwiched between the slide and the plate itself, giving even more space to soak up that recoil so that recoil isn't transmitted into the fasteners. You can see here the way that they did that was by moving the dot backwards just slightly. You can see these holes are further back than the ones in the Glock MOS plate. That's going to open up the space up front, close out the space in the back, and it's going to allow them to put this boss in here, as opposed to the MOS plate that splits that difference, leaving the dot to float around on the plate. Now the bottom of the plates are relatively identical. We have the same longitudinal valley. Now what this does is this is going to lock that plate from side to side. One of my problems with the Glock MOS system is that this is the only support that it has. The only other support is where the back comes up against the slide and the threaded fasteners themselves, again imparting a lot of shear force through those threaded fasteners. I like some of the other systems that gives you also a transverse valley to lock into the slide even better, but that's the Glock MOS system. That's just what it is now. That's not anything against the C&H plate. That's just Glock. So now that we went over some of the specifics of each one of the plates, let's go ahead and put them on the guns and show you that. First up, let's go ahead and get the C&H plate on here. So you can see what this valley does right here. You can sit the plate here, slide it across, and it's going to lock in there. It doesn't have a whole lot of movement side to side. It does have a little bit of movement front to back. There seems to be about a 20,000th gap in there. And you probably can't see it, but I can hear that plate moving around a little bit. Next up, let's go ahead and use some of the Vibrotite that C&H provides with its plates. We're going to go ahead and sit that on the fasteners because in order to properly function, that's got to be on there for 10 minutes before we tighten it on the gun. Now, our Glock MOS plate over here comes with 2 fasteners with Loctite pre-applied, but if you're going to use these multiple times, you do need to reapply Loctite. Blue preferably, never red. Holosun also includes screws with its dot that work with the MOS system. However, these screws do not work with the C&H plate. C&H does, however, include their screws with their plate. Okay, our 10 minutes is up. Let's go ahead and continue. Let's grab our now Vibrotited fasteners. Go ahead and slide them in. We're going to tighten them down into our slide. I'm going to do one side, then the other side. Then I'm going to tighten both of them up. We're going to go to approximately 13 inch-pounds on this. And there is our C&H plate installed, ready for a dot on top. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the Glock plate on, and we'll compare the two prior to dot installation. So now we've got our Glock plate. Let's go ahead and slide that on. It's going to snap in just like the C&H plate does. Now you're going to see a difference here. The C&H plate is a little bit wider than our slide. Not only that, it also has a nice chamfer down here at the bottom to mold its way into the full footprint of an RMR. So what that's going to give you is that's going to give you a complete sealing surface versus the MOS plate here, which is going to leave a little bit of your dot hanging over. We'll cover that a little bit more here in just a minute when we actually get the dots on the guns. So next, let's go ahead and toss our Glock MOS screws in here. Now this one should be a little bit easier as I don't have to worry about wet Vibrotite. Now the Glock screws are a little bit bigger of a screw head. And get those down in there. There's one. And there's 2. Again, with the Glock, we're going to go to about 13 inch-pounds from my calibrated hand. Okay, so now we've got both plates on there, and with the back of the gun sitting even, you can see what the C&H plate does for mounting the dot further back than the Glock MOS plate. Also, you can see how much wider this footprint is on the CNH plate, and you can see all of the recoil locations on the CNH plate versus the stock MOS plate. Now let's go ahead and put the dots on and see how everything matches up there. First up, let's go ahead and put the Holosun on our CNH plate. Now I have it on here, but there's no screws. Now I wanted to show you that there is virtually no movement in this plate. The only movement that you're seeing right now is it kind of rolling up and down because there aren't fasteners in there, but it is rock solid on there because we have 4 different points of contact internally here, and it's pressed right up against this front boss, which is going to make it even more solid. Let's go ahead and put the fasteners in this one. Now really quick, I want to point out that I'm an idiot and I swapped these screws, so I just swapped them back. Now we can put our dot on. Drop that one in there. Okay, mostly down. Okay, there's the other side. Now let's get both those tightened down and use calibrated wrist. There we go. And there we go. All right. So there is our CNH plate installed on our 17 MOS here. Now let's go ahead and finish up installing the Holosun on our Glock MOS plate. Now, here's our dot on the MOS plate. First of all, you notice how easily it falls off. Secondly, check this out. That rattling that you're hearing is the dot moving around on the MOS plate. And that is the primary concern with the MOS plate, is that all of that movement then gets transmitted directly into the rear fasteners. And the rear fasteners are not meant to hold that kind of movement. Now, you do have that movement mitigated slightly by the friction between the bottom of our dot and the top of the MOS plate here. But the top of the MOS plate is relatively smooth finished. The bottom of our optic is relatively smooth finished. So putting that on there and hearing that rattling is the primary concern with the standard MOS plate on a Glock. You don't get that on the CNH plate. Let's go ahead and finish this installation. Again, these have Loctite pre-applied. So this first use of these, we do not need to reapply Loctite. Toss those in and tighten them up. We're going to go again to about 13 pound-feet. And there is our dot on our 34. Again, we've got that spacing on the front, which we don't have on the CNH plate here. And here's what I was talking about earlier. Down here on the bottom, you can see this hangover that the dot has. This is the bottom of the dot. Now on the Holosun, this isn't a big deal. Holosun has a sealed battery compartment and all of the electronics are sealed as well. RMRs, however, do not have sealed battery compartments. On the bottom of our CNH plate, you can see this is actually plate going right up to the edge of our dot, fully sealing the entire bottom of our dot, therefore making the CNH plate a better waterproof seal than the Glock MOS plate. So that's it, guys. That is the comparison of the Glock MOS system to the CNH V4 system that is currently on sale. Now, you can use the code WorkTheTrigger to get free shipping on CNH optics plates. I will have a link in the description down below for these plates, and in my opinion, these V4 plates are fantastic. These fix all of the issues that I've got with the Glock MOS plate. Now, does that mean I'm crapping on the MOS system? Absolutely not. Glock's system and the fact that they give you 4 plates with their firearms makes this one of the most versatile out-of-the-box systems. You can get this MOS system and be able to run a massive amount of dots. However, if you're dedicating yourself to a single dot footprint, such as the RMR footprint, which will run an RMR, an SRO, and all of the Holosun pistol optics, I would suggest upgrading from your stock MOS to one of these V4 plates from CNH. Thanks guys for watching. If you found this video useful, go ahead and like and subscribe down below. If you're looking forward to some updated information about these plates and how they perform together, go ahead and hit that notification bell and that'll let you know when that video is out. If you like what we do here on the channel and you want to help out a little bit, head on over to our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/workthetrigger. Remember, I appreciate every one of you, and until next time, do your research, get informed, and get to work.